we've reached the end of 2025. Before we take a look at some of the best that came out this year, it's time to take a look at the top 10 worst. And please remember that this is just my opinion. It's not a personal attack against you if you like any of these movies. Number 10, Lilo and Stitch. This is the M. Night Shyamalan's The Last Airbender of the Disney live-action remakes, meaning that it completely misses the heart and emotional weight of the original source material. And that's especially strange, considering the director previously did Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, the film that was overflowing with charm. In contrast, Lilo and Stitch feels utterly soulless. While the CGI on the aliens, especially Jumba, is surprisingly good, many creative changes fall flat. Zach Galifianakis and Billy Magnussen do what they can as Jumba and Pleakley, but the choice to make them look like humans in holographic disguises robs the characters of their visual humor. Gantu is missing entirely, and Jumba is repurposed as the main villain without a redemption arc. Worst of all, Stitch is no longer destructive, just mischievous, removing his need for growth and nullifying the story's emotional arc. Lilo's character is heavily watered down, and while the young actress playing her does a fine job, she's written without any of the original's unique quirks. Nani is miscast, overacting or underacting with little consistency, and David is completely useless in the plot. Even the theme of Ohana is diluted and confused by the end. There's no reason to watch this, but the original still exists. It's inferior in every conceivable way. Between this and that upcoming Moana live-action remake, I think Disney has a timeshare in Hawaii. Number 9, Karate Kid Legends. The newest entry in the series has some genuine strengths, but it's also a frustrating mixed bag. Let's start with the positives. Ben Wong and Sadie Stanley are both great in their roles, with Stanley especially shining as a compelling love interest. She previously played Kim Possible in the live-action Disney Channel movie, and hopefully Karate Kid Legends gives her the breakout she deserves. The film is also the most mature in the series, exploring weighty themes like PTSD and survivor's guilt. It's also the only Karate Kid film to receive a PG-13 rating, and you can tell they're aiming for a deeper emotional tone. The fight choreography is slick and well executed, and initially the film holds up. But where it falls apart is the narrative and pacing. The movie feels like a paint-by-numbers remake of the original. You can practically fill in the blanks with the Karate Kid Mad Libs. Kid named Blank moves from blank to blank, meets love interest named Blank, fights bully named Blank, trains with Master Blank for a tournament. Except this time, it's not even a reboot, it's a sequel. And that's where it becomes more frustrating. The film adds almost nothing new to the mythology. It feels like it only exists because Cobra Kai was popular, not because the story needed to be told. The main character already has a backstory with Jackie Chan's Mr. Han before the film even starts, so there's no emotional journey for their relationship like we had with Daniel and Miyagi. If you're going into this movie excited to see Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan on screen together, lower your expectations. They don't even meet until the last 30 minutes, and most of their key scenes were spoiled in the trailer. The final tournament also feels rushed, with very little build-up. At only around 90 minutes, the movie could have used another half hour to flesh out the story and give us more martial arts action. Overall, unless you're a die-hard Karate Kid fan, this one's skippable, or at least wait until it's streaming. Number 8, Back in Action. A generic action movie released to Netflix in the month of January. If you saw the trailer for this and thought, this looks pretty generic, I've seen this before and done much better, this is not going to surprise you. The plot has already been done in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. The plot is a generic spy movie, the action isn't that impressive, none of the jokes are funny, and honestly, everyone involved with the movie deserves better. Jamie Foxx, Cameron Diaz, Glenn Close, Kyle Chandler, even Andrew Scott, who I haven't seen since Sherlock ended, and was pleasantly surprised to see here, are all great in other things, but with this you can tell that they're there just to get their paycheck and leave. This movie started production shortly after the COVID lockdowns ended and movies started production again, and you can tell. Everyone there is just there to make a few bucks. There's no effort or passion put into this, it's painfully generic, and it's a movie you can skip. Number 7, Last Breath, which was a frustrating movie, because on paper it has all the ingredients for a tense claustrophobic thriller. The premise alone, survival under extreme pressure in a confined space, should naturally create suspense, emotional investment, and white-knuckle tension. Unfortunately, the film never fully commits to developing its characters and relationships between them, which makes it difficult to care when things start going wrong. We're told these people matter to each other, but we rarely feel it. As a result, the danger feels more mechanical than emotional. The pacing also works against the film. Instead of slowly tightening the screws and letting dread build, it rushes through moments that should linger and barely allows the audience to sit with the stakes. Visually and conceptually, there are flashes of what the movie could have been, but without stronger character work, these moments fall flat. In the end, Last Breath is hollow, leaving behind a sense of wasted potential rather than a lasting impact. Number 6, the Minecraft movie, which I know is going to be a hot take, because despite barely having a plot and having phoned-in performances, this movie somehow grossed over $1 billion. In my opinion, this movie was a mess. The question, how do you make a successful, charming movie using an IP that has no story to begin with, was answered with the Lego Movie. This is the Lego Movie if it were bad. When Jared Hess is the writer in addition to the director, this one turned out pretty good. Unfortunately, Hess is not the writer. This movie feels like a bunch of 40-somethings trying way too hard to appeal to the kids of today. The dialogue consists of, first we mine, and then we craft. Minecraft! And these lines are said without any sense of self-awareness or making a movie where the audience is in on the joke. Instead, it seems just like the Lego Movie, making a movie about a property that you can do anything with should be a logical choice. Unfortunately, this movie lacks what the Lego Movie had: heart, humor, and charm. Hess's trademark is movies about nerdy misfits who are socially awkward, but are charming. Napoleon Dynamite, for example, isn't so much of a plot-driven movie, but it works because the main character is relatable and charming. Here, none of the characters are memorable. Even Jack Black, who's worked with Hess before and made Nacho Libre some of Hess's best work, and brought a fun performance to previous video game movies like Mario, just essentially plays a human version of Poe the Panda. Except, unlike Poe, Black's character has no growth. In fact, none of the characters have any growth. They just exist to move the plot forward without giving the audience any reason to care about them. The plot, and I use that word generously and very, very loosely here, is thin and has no flow. The jokes have no natural build-up or segue, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly who the main character of the film is or what the end goal is. This is a film that has no idea who it's for. The plot isn't interesting enough to keep the kids or adults engaged, and the humor is too childish for the adults, while at the same time not hitting the right notes for the kids either. A child at my screening tripped and fell as he was running during the movie, and that moment was more entertaining than this film, and I'm sure any pain he felt was nothing compared to having to sit through this film. In Minecraft, you need to have a foundation to build something, and this film has no foundation, so therefore it all falls apart. This is a film that should be buried in the netherworld. It's a film for pretty much nobody, and you can justifiably skip it. And the fact that it made over $1 billion with the sequel now in development is proof that we cannot have nice things. Number 5, Woman in the Yard. This movie, unfortunately, is going to contribute to the stigma of PG-13 horror films are not scary, which is not true. I've seen plenty of PG-13 horror films that creep me out quite effectively, and some had really well-done stories. Unfortunately, this movie has neither a good story nor good scares. The film at times has some good psychological elements of having the main character and audience ask what's real and not real, and there is some creepy imagery. The film does work somewhat as a chamber piece, which is a movie where the main character is trapped in one location for most of the film. Think films like Disturbia, 10 Cloverfield Lane, A Quiet Place, or Shut In. But these are pieces that, when put together as a whole picture, don't really fit quite right. The film is riddled with horror movie cliches like the car not starting. The film comes off as very pretentious by trying to be a metaphor for grief and trauma, but the execution by the end comes off as very confusing, as if the filmmakers were trying to make the movie smarter than it could be. By the end, it all falls apart. This is just kind of a background noise movie for somebody's Halloween party. It doesn't do anything new or interesting. It checks all the boxes and goes exactly where you expect. If you like predictable and safe horror films, this is one you'll probably enjoy, but if you're looking for something innovative, this is a film you can skip. Number 4, Odessa. This was a movie I was really looking forward to. The trailer had all the right vibes for me. Hey, dystopian future with the aesthetic of an 80s film. That's also an 80s style rock opera. That sounds awesome. Unfortunately, that concept is more interesting than the execution. There's some good ideas, but they're all very underdeveloped. It feels like it's borrowing from too many other stories. The rock opera album concept feels taken from Rush's 2112, which is a Rush album about a dystopian future. Bob's Burgers even kind of had an homage to it. It also feels like a gender-swapped version of George Orwell's 1984, with the villain being this charismatic leader who has eyes everywhere. The aesthetic feels very derivative of the Capitol from the Hunger Games, and the concept of the main character being a farm worker who has a destiny to defeat the evil overlord, that's the original Star Wars. Now, visually it's very interesting, and at times feels like an A24 film, and the songs are really good. There aren't any bad songs in this movie, and the people involved can actually sing. It doesn't sound overly auto-tuned. However, the segues to the songs don't feel natural. They feel forced. The main character is very paper-thin without much of an arc, making it hard to care what happens to her. If you ask me to describe the main character, I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you. Her love story is also very rushed. The film doesn't really take the time to flesh out their relationship. It just uses her falling in love as a way to make things go bad for her in the second act. The side character she falls in love with has more of a character arc than she does. By the end of the film, it just feels very unsatisfying. The villain is this charismatic leader who is able to make the world into his own personal cult, and they don't give us much info about how the world got this way, or how he was able to take power and control people. It's mildly explained in like 1 or 2 sentences at the beginning, but again, there's a lot more potential that should have been further explored. This feels like a movie where they had the concept and outline, and then wrote songs based on the outline. When it came time to make a full-fledged story and script, they couldn't think of anything, so they just worked from an outline. Just listen to the soundtrack, because besides the visuals, that's the only interesting thing about the film. It may be inspired by Rush, but the film itself is also rushed. Number 3, Smurfs. The first 10 minutes have 1 or 2 mildly amusing jokes, and casting John Goodman as Papa Smurf is a pretty great choice. Other than that, the film does not work. It's the cliche, what is my talent, who am I story, that we've seen done much better in Encanto, My Little Pony, and Care Bears. Maybe the film could have worked if the majority of the jokes were not trying too hard to be trendy. In this movie filled with fantasy elements such as wizards and fantastical creatures, we also get references to Zoom and DoorDash. Thankfully, the infamous influencer Smurf from the trailer did not make the final cut of the film. The plot is more or less the 2011 Neil Patrick Harris film again, where for some reason the Smurfs are sent to the human world, and this only matters for about 5 minutes, because for the majority of the film, we spend time with creatures reminiscent of the Tribbles from Star Trek. Keeping the Smurfs in their own world would have made more sense. The film also cannot decide if it wants to be musical or not. The film has a total of 3 musical numbers, and the rest of the soundtrack is a glorified commercial for Rihanna music. It also provides the voice of Smurfette. Not since DreamWorks Home has a movie felt so self-indulgent for Rihanna. The 3 musical numbers that are in the film are forgettable, generic, mass-market pop music trash, manufactured to be top 40 hits on the radio. Apart from a couple of mild swear words, the majority of the film isn't necessarily bad for kids. There aren't any bad messages or anything, but the film is not exactly the most enriching or best use of time. This past year we had Looney Tunes, Elio, and Zoopocalypse, all of which were much smarter. While kids may get some amusement out of it, the film provides nothing for adults. There are much better films to choose for your family movie night. Number 2, Alexander, the incredibly long movie title that I don't have time to say. Let's make a sequel to a movie that came out 10 years ago, that was critically and commercially panned, and when we do the sequel, we'll write it without any actual source material, since the first movie was based on a book that does not have a sequel, and we'll replace the whole cast. We'll also make it super niche, by having every joke be something only Mexicans would understand, because the audience of Mexicans who also like the first movie is so big. Now, you can do a movie with Mexican culture and have it do very well, and be accessible to everybody. Movies like Coco and Flamin' Hot are great examples of that, but this one seems very narrow in the audience, which is weird, because you'd think Disney would want as broad an audience as possible, and doing a sequel and replacing the original cast is such a great strategy. It never goes wrong. Greenlighting projects like this is why Disney Plus is losing money as subscribers and why their stock is dropping. Not to mention, this movie is one of my least favorite genres, the road trip genre. Now, there are a couple of those I think work, such as Addams Family 2 and the Goofy Movie, but the majority of them, like Pixar's Onward, Alvin and the Chipmunks The Road Trip, and Diary of a Wimpy the Long Haul, are pretty bad. There's only so many jokes you can do with that genre, and they've all been done. Leaving one of the family members at a gas station, for example. That's done in every road trip movie ever. Stop it. On top of that, the plot is all over the place. It's basically 2 different movies. On one hand, it's a road trip movie, but then it's also trying to be an Indiana Jones type story with the cursed idol, and I don't know, it was just odd. I don't know. maybe there's an audience for this, but it wasn't for me. For me, the jokes were either jokes I didn't get because I'm not Mexican, or they were jokes that have been done in every other road trip movie. For me, this is a movie I'd recommend skipping. And the absolute worst movie of 2025, without a doubt, nothing even comes close, is Ice Cube in War of the Worlds. Oh boy. How do you manage to screw up War of the Worlds? By making the whole thing a Zoom call, barely showing any of the action, have it star Ice Cube, and then make the plot about government conspiracies. Also, make it an ad for Amazon Prime. Now, doing War of the Worlds as found footage, that could theoretically work, but the execution here is awful. It barely has anything to do with War of the Worlds. It's an incredibly stupid movie with even stupider execution, and I don't know why this was greenlit. It's not even so bad that you can make fun of it. It's just boring, and that's one of the worst crimes you can commit with a movie. I'd rather have a bad movie that I can at least have fun with, but I can't even do that. If it's a bad movie and it's also boring, that's a huge problem. This is my absolute honor to crown it as the worst movie of 2025. So go ahead and leave a ranking of the 10 worst movies you saw this year, and I'll see you next time.